So welcome everybody to another episode of Fireside Chat with a Naturopath, brought to you by Scale Up Naturopath, a digital marketing and technology company whose mission is to increase awareness of the naturopathic industry across Canada. I am Dr. Christina De Avila, naturopath and certified diabetes educator, and I will be your host today. And it is my true honor and privilege to introduce to you Dr. Alexia Georgousis, naturopathic doctor. Welcome to our episode today.
Thank you, Christina. Good to be here.
So Dr. Alexia is a former Associate Dean of Clinical Studies at Boucher Institute of Naturopathic Medicine. She's also a former clinical faculty member at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine for 15 years. She's currently teaching at the Transformational Arts College in Toronto. She is a storyteller, speaker, consultant, in addition to private practice. She offers presentations and workshops on burnout prevention, holistic resiliency, and conscious awareness. She continues to deepen her own growth through ongoing training in areas such as mind-body medicine, transformative mindfulness, chakra systems, mysticism, nature cure, spirituality, interdisciplinary mindfulness, core shamanism, and life coaching. It sounds like you are quite busy, Dr. Alexia.
Well, I am, but I've been in practice for a long time too.
So today, what we really wanted to bring to you, everyone who's joining in, is, you know, there's a lot of sort of uncertainty floating around, with some people who, have had the misfortune of losing their job and aren't quite sure what the financial situation is going to look like. Even people who are currently employed, but, how long is maybe that going to last, and what is coming their way? Parents who are now not only working from home, so they've got their professional hat on, but they're also parents and, having to guide and instruct the little ones, with online programs that are now being kind of executed here in Toronto. So our topic today is really about inner stability in facing the unknown. And I'm really excited to hear your insights here, Dr. Alexia. So why don't we kick things off with really defining what is inner stability?
Well, it's a really great question, and everything that you touched on is extremely valid because we are in a time that is unprecedented. It is something that none of us are familiar with. So in terms of inner stability, what this refers to for me is a sense of being able to feel very grounded and very centered so that we can respond. Because when we don't have that felt sense of stability, that's when we become very reactive. And it doesn't mean that we don't feel fear or anxiety, because it is indicated right now. Those emotions are going to run through us. Mm-hmm. But the key is developing an awareness so that rather than be completely attached to what's happening outside of us, that we're able to see what's happening, be informed and take the precautionary measures, but then also work with what's happening inside so that we can actually provide a sense of stability for ourselves, but also everybody around us. Mm-hmm. And that allows for clarity, because we cannot make healthy decisions when we're in an impulsive fear state.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, it kind of really harnesses conversations I have a lot with patients of mine is, really that sympathetic versus parasympathetic system, right? And which one is really kicking into gear? Kind of coming back to what you were saying is, are we in a fight or flight, alarm, responsive state, or are we really in a place where we can kind of look at things objectively and, start to, have a different opinion about what's going on, so to speak?
Yes, and for sure, the physiology impacts us for sure. The other part is that it's not an either or right now, and I think that that's often what people are. All of us tend to want a definition, and we want a sense of knowing something, and having a sense of then this is going to happen. And right now we're in a place where we don't know. It's day to day, and we're all being sort of inundated with not only the media and a lot of fear,
Right.
but also the conversations that we're sharing, and really going virtual, where we're working from home. There's all huge learning curves happening. And at the same time, we're also feeling these emotions and the physiology behind the sympathetic nervous system. But we sort of have to be able to have room for both. We can't say either or, because this is why I think on a very symbolic level, that globally what is happening is that this is making humanity kind of wake up and get a sense of who we really are, instead of attaching to the labels so much around my job, or this security. It's a false security. The things on the material plane disappear, right? That's just part of life.
Right.
So being able to recognize, okay, right now I'm feeling really anxious, or I'm feeling really fearful, and once we see that, being able to bring it into a place of, and in this moment I'm okay. And we do have to acknowledge the fear, right? But it's a matter of it, whether it becomes our driver. And that's where we have to be very careful with what we are choosing to think about.
Right. Yeah. It sounds, a lot of the flexibility and ability to adapt, right? Which I kind of think nature really teaches us very nicely, right?
Oh, yes, very much so. Nature's a perfect example of adaptation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like you've already touched on this a little bit, but, why is inner stability so important when we are facing the unknown, and how can it really help us during this time?
Yeah, yes, the inner stability is basically something where, when we're able to feel like we're okay, or that we trust ourselves, that gives a sense of confidence, not that's arrogant, but a sense of confidence that's a felt sense. It's not just thinking about it, because again, there's a book that's out there called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, right? And it means that, yes, it's okay that fear is here, and I can still do this. So it doesn't go into black and white. So having inner stability is, for me, a reminder that all of these emotions can be here, all of this unknown can be here, and I can choose how I'm going to show up. I can choose how I'm going to respond. And that in itself, when we have choice, it gives us our own sense of power, because a lot of people are feeling very powerless right now.
Right.
And again, this is something where we have to pay attention to, where are we directing our sense of power, or where do we believe we're getting our power from? And it's not from outside of us.
Right.
It doesn't come from outside of us. It comes from inside.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that I was just saying that, that's sort of why it's very important to develop this sense of internal stability, so that we can actually, operate in the world and step into the unknown without losing our sense of power.
For me, I think of everything you said, the really profound word that stuck out to me was the choice, right?
Yeah.
Like, we do have a choice, even when things are so uncertain, around us. So
Yes.
that's quite powerful, I think.
Yes. And the other thing that you had mentioned around adaptation, and what's happening too, is a lot of people are forgetting that we are born to be resilient. We absolutely have an innate awareness, as we know in naturopathy, that this awareness we share with all beings on the planet, whatever winged ones, the trees, the plants, the creepy crawlers, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
And we forget that we have this ability. The problem is, we've been so cut off from our physicality, in terms of our physical felt sense, that we're too much in the thinking mind. And that creates a lot of fear, and a lot of, propagation around catastrophizing or futurizing, instead of letting us be in the present.
I think too is, the fact is, we've almost been on autopilot for so long, right? We get up,
Yes.
we go to work, we come home, we do, XYZ chores before we kind of go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. And all of that has now taken away. So, talk about coming into the present, talk about, actually consciously making the choice of
Yeah.
what your day is going to look like. What does this mean to you, and how are you going to process all of it?
Yes, and I think that that's part of a bit of the shockwave and the disbelief that people are experiencing, because what you're describing is that, our brain is known to habituate. That's what we do. We physiologically start to habituate.
Right.
And when there's change or disruption, it's like suddenly it's something we're not familiar with, and it's new and it's different and it's unknown. But the regularity of having, the same routine, there is benefit to that. However, what also happens is, in terms of more of a conscious awareness level, and in terms of whether you want to call it spirituality or vitality that is within us, we become very dull, and we are not awake to ourselves or what really matters in the world, like our sense of connection with people, our connection with the environment, and even the relationship that we have with ourselves, including our relationship to spirituality, which is really around, again, the idea of consciousness. Because the other thing is, what's hitting people, I think, is this sense of vulnerability around mortality. Because this is something we very often in this culture, or at least I would generalize in terms of the Western world, that we don't seem to have a relationship with our mortality. So all of these layers are hitting us. And you're right, it's like all of a sudden, wow, we have to be present with so much. So it is overwhelming. But the thing that I want to stress is, everyone has the ability to work with what's going on inside. Everyone has this. And it really is a matter of choice, which allows awareness to deepen.
Right. Yeah. And so just out of curiosity, in your private practice, as you're probably having these conversations with patients, what are you seeing that people are ultimately presenting with? What are their concerns that are, kind of driving conversations that you are having with these people?
Well, most people that are really feeling quite impacted by everything are generally feeling a sense of mix of sadness, grief, worry, some overwhelm, and a heightened sense of responsibility in terms of, depending on what their work is, for example, or suddenly looking at, what's happening in their families. And this sort of emotional, stability or instability is part of, the healing triangle. Naturopathic medicine works with the mental, the emotional, the physical, that is sort of held by consciousness, or the integration of spirituality within those. So again, the emotional well-being of someone absolutely impacts everything, just like the physical well-being. But when people come in right now, they're really just struggling with trying to sort of navigate this very new and different way of being. And the big piece that I'm trying to work with people is letting them, first of all, reassuring them that at the end of the day, we do not have control over what is outside of us. And secondly, that there is an ability that they can work with these, that this is our emotions don't define who we are. They're bundles of energy that work through us, and they're part of being human, but they're not who we are. We just feel them. So when there's that space to say, oh, I'm feeling this, and I can, I have a choice again of noticing all of these thoughts, and how do I go into this place of being able to settle so that I can make the right choice.
As people come to you and you start to have these conversations about inner stability, probably a big question everyone at home is asking is, how do I develop this, or how do I deepen my inner sense of stability? So, what are the sort of recommendations or, kind of concepts that you put out to that you are working with people when you're having these conversations?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There are a tremendous number of tools, some of which can be as easy as noticing one breath. where you basically drop into noticing your full inhalation and exhalation, and you can keep your eyes open. But that's one practice. Another practice is, if someone is suffering, for example, from acute anxiety or a sense of panic, then one of the best ways to shift the body, because remember, it's almost as if, wherever our thoughts go, that's where our energy goes. And there is a saying in mysticism that wherever we put our attention, that's where energy will flow. So if you are finding, if somebody's finding themselves swirling in a lot of fear thoughts, one of the best ways to shift is immediately notice the senses of the body. So it can be something as simple as, what are two things I see? What are two things I can touch? What are two things I can taste? What are two things I can hear? And by coming into our sensations rather, that will stop the thinking mind. It interrupts it. It's almost as if the thoughts will still be there, but they can't just be streaming. And when people's thoughts are streaming, that's what causes this sort of propagation of this, this excessive drama. And again, it goes into cortisol. It's like they're just swimming in a bath of cortisol, because they're not able to drop in to themselves and say that right now I'm here. Nature practices, grounding, going into nature, earthing, anything that will allow you to feel that you are present in your body.
Yeah. I think the beautiful piece there is that there's not just one thing, right? Everyone needs to find what works for them. And sometimes you just got to try, right? You got to put something out there and see how it works for you. And often I think people are often surprised by what they find when they really do slow down and they kind of return to their body and just notice, right? We don't notice what's going on.
Exactly. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that when we're so caught up in our regular day-to-day, that's that sort of dullness where we get a bit numb. And it's as if we're just living in this on this one level of thinking mind and seeing, social media or whatever else it is. And we do forget about the fact that we have a physical body, and it's very, it has a rich life. And the body speaks to us all the time. And it's knowing that when we can just be curious and be willing to step into something that's unfamiliar, you're right, that all of a sudden someone will be pleasantly surprised. And it's not like it's curative. This is a lifelong practice. And I think it's something that everyone can benefit from. And it's not a cure-all. It basically is a tool to help someone feel that they can be self-aligned. They can be self-defined, right?
I think that was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful way of really putting it all together. So thank you for that. If there's anything that you feel you would really like people to take away, that, if there was 3 things that, people should walk away from this, fireside chat with, what would you say?
I would say trust the process, trust yourself, and be willing. We have to know that we have to be new and different in order to meet what is new and different right now. We cannot show up as how we used to be. Right.
Yeah. And who knows, right? What's tucked away that we haven't yet allowed ourselves to unleash for whatever reason, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alexia. I think this was such a powerful conversation. I really hope people feel, at least curious to try something new, to come back into their bodies and start to, reinvent themselves in whatever way it is, and trust themselves and trust the process and to be curious, right? So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being with us here today. Everyone out there, please follow Dr. Alexia on Instagram. Her handle is alexia.naturedoc. Like her on Facebook. And if you enjoyed our conversation today, check out her upcoming live event on April 19th. Which is a series on current consciousness, learning awareness tools to develop the inner stability during uncertain times. All of this information will be on the Scale Up Naturopath social media, so you can find it all there. Don't forget to follow a Scale Up Naturopath and stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you, Dr. Alexia.
Thank you, Christina.